Two things in black people's genes. You don't drink, you don't get drunk, and you don't fall asleep. A nigga falls asleep, he will get sold. Sell him.
Near me. Mr. Bolden, I'm sure you still meet the remark that, what are the Negroes, why aren't they optimistic? And I apologize and preface this by the phrase "the Negroes" because it lumps together an awful lot of people. You and Floyd McKissick and Madam Clayton Powell and Hattie McDaniel and Jackie Robinson, and it's impossible, I suppose, to... But for want of a better phrase, if you'll allow me, they say, but it's getting so much better. There are Negro mayors. There's Negroes in all of sports. There are Negroes in politics. They're even accorded the ultimate accolade of being in television commercials now. I'm glad you're smiling. Is it at once getting much better and still hopeless?
Well, I don't think there's much hope for it, to tell you the truth. As long as people are using this peculiar language. It's what I was trying to convey before when I said that it's not a question of what happens to the Negro here, or to the black man here. That's a very vivid question for me, But the real question is what's going to happen to this country. I have to repeat that. Now, if the Negroes, don't seem to be very optimistic, it's not because they suddenly all changed from happy, shiftless, dancing darkies down on the levee, picking all that cotton and singing praises to the master. They've not changed at all. They never were optimistic. All one got to do.
And I am so blessed and I'm so happy because the Mexicans got their nigga wake-up call. Wake up, nigga. A nigga wake-up call's a bitch. The Mexicans got their nigga wake-up call. They were running around here thinking they were white folks.
Murder, leaving aside the bloody catalog of oppression, which we are in one way too familiar with already, what this does to the subjugated, the most private, the most serious thing this does to the subjugated, is to destroy his sense of reality. It destroys, for example, his father's authority over him. His father can no longer tell him anything because the past has disappeared, and his father has no power in the world. This means, in the case of an American Negro, born in that glittering republic, and in the moment you are born, since you don't know any better, every stick and stone and every face is white, and since you have not yet seen a mirror, you suppose that you are too. It comes as a great shock around the age of 5 or 6 or 7 to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance, along with everybody else, has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to discover that Gary Cooper killing off the Indians when you were rooting for Gary Cooper, that the Indians were you. And the word Negro in this country really is designed finally to disguise the fact that one is talking about another man, a man like you, who wants what you want. And insofar as the American Republic wants to think there has been progress, they overlook one very simple thing. I don't want to be given anything by you. I just want you to leave me alone so I can do it myself. And it also overlooks another very important thing. Perhaps I don't think that this republic is the summit of human civilization. Perhaps I don't want to become like Ronald Reagan or like the president of General Motors. Perhaps I have another sense of life, which in fact my situation here has forced me to trust. And perhaps I know more about you and your institutions than you know about me. And perhaps I have a judgment on them. Perhaps I don't want what you think I want. And that there's nothing you can give me. Perhaps there is something that I can give you. It is not new for me. We've always felt that. It is new for you. And if we were white, if we were Irish, if we were Jewish, if we were Poles, if we had, in fact, in your mind, a frame of reference, our heroes would be your heroes too. Nat Turner would be a hero for you instead of a threat. Malcolm X might still be alive. What the American public has always tried to do is to accommodate me into a system which is always meant to my death. They want me to become an accomplice to my own murder. That is what you really mean by integration.
That's impressive. I don't understand it. That last sentence.
Stokely Carmichael says, and he's quite right, that integration is a euphemism for white supremacy. The truth is that we have been integrated here since we got here. You know, that is not what the battle is at all. If Negroes in this country arranged from every color under heaven, from yours to mine, to people even blacker than me, that gives away the history and tells us what happened. Or as an old black woman once put it to me, to sum it up, she said, white people don't hate black people. If they did, we'd all be black. That's something you got to face. I mean, you, the American Republic. We are your brothers, and you're disowned brothers and sons and sisters and daughters. You got to face that. I can't, and Martin Luther King said this too in another way, I can't really ask a black boy younger than, let's say, 20 years old, all right? 17 years old, 25 years old. There are two things I can't ask him to do. I can't ask him to allow himself to live on the terms bequeathed him by the American white people of this country. I cannot ask him to allow the forces which rule this country to emasculate him. I cannot do that. I won't do that. I don't, on the other hand, will not either, counsel a generation, to go out into the streets to die. But there is nothing in the evidence offered by the book of the American Republic which allows me really to argue with a cat who says to me, they needed us to pick the cotton, and now they don't need us anymore. And now they don't need us, they're going to kill us all off, just like they did the Indians. No one's concerned about the white power which keeps my children in the ghetto, which does not educate my children, except to become inferiors. This is power. And when the Republic reacts as it did to the linking of the two words, power and black, it's a confession of what the country has done with its power. Now, in fact, I don't think anything in the black ferment of the Black Revolution really involves revenge or is vindictive at all. It is the white imagination, the guilty white imagination, which makes this out of it, and it's this which paralyzed us in all our social activities. And no matter how many people say, you're being paranoid when you talk about police brutality, I know what I'm talking about. I survived those streets and those precinct basements, and I know. And every black cat in this country knows what the policeman is really like. And furthermore, I'll tell you this. I know what he was like when I was really helpless, how many beatings I got. And I know what happens now because I'm not really helpless, but I know, too, that if I haven't got the presence of mind, to do whatever I have to do, he doesn't know that this is Jimmy Baldwin and not just some other nigger. You're going to blow my head off just like he blows off everybody else's head. And this is done with the will of the state. And this cannot be overstated. Mm-hmm. It can happen to my mother in the morning, to my sister, to my brother. It's only now beginning to be born on you since it's happening to your heroes. What has happened all these years to us? For me, this has always been a violent country. It has never been a democracy.
I just think you risk being misunderstood by people who would be, pardon the expression, sympathetic by what sounds like too broad a statement.
But you must understand that part of what is happening here is a tremendous gap between my experience of life, I'm using myself as a black man, right? And your experience of life, you as a white man, okay? Mm. And you say sympathetic, for example. But you overlook, I hate to put it this way, this may sound like an overstatement too, that I, historically speaking, have lived here with your sympathy, for a very long time. It may have occurred to me now that if I could live with your sympathy as long as I have, I can possibly live without it. I mean, I want your sympathy anymore, maybe I can't afford it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about individual policemen, and no doubt Nixon loves his children. I'm talking about the structure for which these people work. Yes. Policemen in the ghetto are not there, no matter what liberal newspapers may say, are not there to protect my life. They're there to protect your property.
and I suppose you do agree, all this emphasis upon black man and white does emphasize something which is here, but it emphasizes it or perhaps exaggerates it, and therefore makes us put people together in groups which they ought not to be in. I have more in common with a black scholar than I have with a white man who's against scholarship. And you have more in common with a white author than you have with someone who's against all literature. So why must we always concentrate on color or on religion or this? There are other ways of connecting men.
I'm not talking about that. I understand
I know
that.
you're not.
I understand that. But as we sit here now, by the will of the people, a man named Ronald Reagan governs California. And the terms I'm using, you must understand, are not the terms that I myself might choose. I'm not interested in whether a person is white or black or green or yellow, but I'm talking about the force of the state which at this moment is oppressing black people all over this nation. The first difficulty, then, is to, and you will say this is true for everybody, but I, unlike you, all right? In the first place, I have to deal with the fact that my history is inaccessible to me. That my history in this country begins with the bill of sale. Let us say we're both black, right? We both get here at the same time, right? You come from one tribe, I come from another. You speak one language, I speak another. We cannot talk to each other. We don't know what is happening to us. We're confronting a white man with a Bible and a gun and a cross. And what you have to do, if you're going to live, is accept this stranger, this book you cannot yet read, under the gun. One has to really excavate out of the absence of a history, and then out of the presence of a history which is absolutely indescribable. You must remember that I was taught, and black children until today are being taught, that no black people ever contributed anything to history, that I was not much better than an ape, and I was lucky to be discovered in Africa by white people. I'm also the oldest of 9 children, all of whom are black. I'm one of the few survivors of my generation, all of whom the people I'm speaking of are black. For every Jimmy Baldwin or Sammy Davis or Harry Belafonte or Sidney Poitier, there are a whole lot of people you've never heard of, at least equally talented, perhaps more talented, who did not manage. I'll tell you how one makes it in this country if you're black. You know, you have to decide somehow that you are not going to be controlled by what white people think of you.
At any rate, everybody, no matter who, no matter what his attitude, is bigoted.
I did not say that.
Well, has an attitude. It's on his face. Is in the way of every boss.
But you're
asking
me to do something impossible. You're asking me to take the will for the deed. I don't know what most white people in this country feel, but I can only include what they feel from the state of their institutions. I don't know if white Christians hate Negroes or not, but I know that we have a Christian church which is white and a Christian church which is black. I know, as Malcolm X once put it, that the most segregated hour in American life is high noon on Sunday. That says a great deal for me about a Christian nation. It means that I can't afford to trust most white Christians and certainly cannot trust the Christian church.
And now a little tune written especially for me, Strange Fruit. Southern trees bear strange fruit, blood on the leaves and blood at the root, black bodies swinging in the southern breeze, strange fruit hanging from the poplar trees. Pastoral scene of the gallant South, the bulging eyes and the twisted mouth, scent of magnolia, sweet and fresh, Then the sudden smell of burning flesh. Here is a fruit for the crows to pluck, for the rain to gather, for the wind to suck, for the sun to rot, for the tree to drop. Here is a strange and bitter cry.
Why has racism been so dominant in our life? What is it about African?
It's about feeling good. But in order to become an American, to have consort with, easy relationships with people from other parts of Europe, the one thing that could unify you is that you were no longer an Italian. Now you're white. That was the unifying stroke. If all of those people from Europe, who weren't white in Europe, but they got white here,
and
that was the lesson.
That gave them a unity.
That's right.
And it gave them a bond with a group. It gave them something that set them apart.
It became whiteness' ideology.
Arthur Ashe was here, the late Arthur Ashe,
yes.
and he said to me, as he said in one other place, he said, in a much quoted comment, he said, living with AIDS is easier than living with racism. It's a harder struggle against racism for me than it is against AIDS. What it meant to me is that there's no way for the rest of us to understand that daily encounter.
Don't you understand that the people who do this thing, who practice racism, are bereft? There is something distorted about the psyche. It's a huge waste, and it's a corruption and a distortion. It's a profound neurosis that nobody examines for what it is. It feels crazy. It is crazy. And it has just as much of a deleterious effect on white people, and possibly equal as it does black people. I always knew that I had the moral high ground all my life. I always thought those people who said I couldn't come in the drugstore and I had to sit in these funny places, I couldn't go in the park.
You felt morally superior to them from day one.
And I thought they knew that I knew that they were inferior to me morally. I always thought that. And my parents always thought that. But if the racist white person, I don't mean the person who is examining his consciousness and so on, doesn't understand that he or she is also a race, it's also constructed, it's also made, and it also has some kind of serviceability. But when you take it away, I take your race away. And there you are, all strung out, and all you got is your little self. And what is that? What are you without racism? Are you any good? Are you still strong? You still smart? You still like yourself? I mean, these are the questions. Part of it is, yes, the victim, how terrible it has been for black people.
You don't like that.
I'm not a victim. I refuse to be one.
And the victim is the other person who is morally inferior and
that's
who
a
has
serious
to hold
question.
on to
Of course.
racism
if you
to
have
somehow
to hold, that's
for
right.
his or her own self-esteem and definition.
If you can only be tall because somebody's on their knees, then you have a serious problem. And my feeling is white people have a very, very serious problem. And they should start thinking about what they can do about it. Take me out of it.
And the advice is to come to grips,
of course,
with your own fears.
Absolutely.
Your own
Look at
fears.
it. Absolutely. Your own fears, your own history, and what you need. What do you need this for? You know, it's not, I said glibly a moment ago, well, it feels good. It must feel good, otherwise they'd give it up. It's wasteful.
Right.
It costs a lot. It's ugly. It hurts. What are you paying for that for?
Driven by fear.
That's right.
Yeah.
This is why the South is so panic-stricken, and essentially the country is so panic-stricken about it. It means this. The generation of boys and girls who are sitting down at those lunch counters are the first generation of Negroes in the entire history of America who were not controlled by the Americans' image of them. This is why Montgomery is so demoralized. Little Rock is so paralyzed. New Orleans, people are going mad. If you can find anywhere in the Deep South Negroes, the South has been saying for generations, they know. They know the Negro. If they're not who I thought they were, who are they? Now, this image, I don't know what this image is, but it has something to do. It has something to do, I'm convinced of this, with the Puritan God. It has something to do with a peculiar and, I believe, absolutely bankrupt morality under which we all are suffering. The one person who was outside this constriction in fact and historically and in life was this pagan, this black pagan.
Who was brought over
Who was
as
brought
a
over,
chattel.
that's right, was brought over as a chattel to God's country. It seems to me that it's a reflection, a direct reflection of the effort made by the white American to keep away, to not be threatened by black people. In some way, the American vision of the world is all wrapped up with their vision of black men, which has to do with their vision of themselves. Black is evil. The saved are white. Now, there's certainly a thread which connects this reality to, makes it possible for the Secretary of State to say, we will not do business with the devil. It is not a Southern problem. It's a national problem. What is happening in New Orleans today began to happen over 100 years ago when, in effect, the North, which was the government, having freed tens of thousands of illiterate black men, then made no provision for them, none whatever. None whatever. They were dumped on the body politic, and no one was responsible for them. And they were, of course, immediately political and industrial footballs for everybody. They were everybody's target. But in a way, black men were very useful to the American because in a country so absolutely undefined, so amorphous, where there were no limits, no height really, and no depth, there was one thing of which one could be certain. One knew where one was by knowing where the Negro was. You knew that you were not on the bottom
because the Negro.
because the Negro was there. You knew, one knows what sin is in the same way. One knows what danger is in the same way. Now, this implies a vision of oneself, it seems to me, and a vision of the world which doesn't stop at the American borders. It is also the way America deals with the world. It must, cannot possibly avoid moving directly into the heart of the people who make up America. I mean that the problem will never be resolved until everybody in the country, in some way, I know how impossible this sounds, however, this is what has to happen, is somehow enabled to do without this crutch. If I were going to describe, I can't name names, so a hypothetical white liberal. Well, I know what he thinks he's doing. But what he's mainly doing is something which demands my tacit cooperation. I have to agree that I am what he says I am in order for us to have any dialogue at all. Now, if I don't agree that he is what I am what he thinks I am, then inevitably, one sees this at once in the face of the people you're dealing with. It means that if I'm not what he takes me to be, that means I have a standard of judgment which is not his, which I may then be using to judge him.
And which may cut the ground from under all the standards.
All the other,
have.
yeah, exactly.
Do you regard this as a distinct threat to the, what shall I call it, the sense of spiritual security, American?
I think the Americans essentially, I don't think this, I know this. Yes, this is a threat to the American personality as it has so far been constituted. It's a threat to it is a threat to their definition of the world. It is a threat to the way what they think reality is. And it's very difficult. I have said in effect that white men must give up what is in effect a crutch. That's right. So must I. This is entirely true. There is something very safe about being a Negro in a way because you can blame anything that happens to you on it. And this is the worst thing about being a Negro, quite apart now from New Orleans, race riots, lynchings, etc., etc. The worst thing about it is at one point somewhere in yourself, you have to realize that, all right, you are a Negro and this is all true, but before that you are a man and your life is in your hands. You are responsible for what happens to you. You cannot blame anybody for it. There is no point. There is no one to blame.